Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Just a Podcast. It is with great pleasure that I say I am joined today with Jenny. And just as always, we're just going to jump right into it.
Amazing.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so pleased that you asked me.
I know that you are a producer. Have you worked on any shows that I might have seen when I was younger growing up?
Well, I'm in Toronto, Canada, so I we do have obviously our own networks and our own production companies.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked on a lot of shows that we have. I wouldn't say stolen. That's a terrible way to say it, but that we have, done after you've done them, or actually the UK. They usually start a lot of the bigger sort of reality shows. So I
Mm-hmm.
worked on Canadian Idol, which was obviously a version of American Idol. I worked on Big Brother Canada, which is, a very large franchise
Mm-hmm.
all around the world. I worked on So You Think You Can Dance, which was a dance competition show. And I worked on a show called Project Runway as well. And that was also a show about designers that
Mm-hmm.
had been created elsewhere, but then, we get the rights for it and then you can make it in, obviously whatever country they allow them to make it in. So I've worked on some
Mm-hmm.
pretty big reality shows. I
Okay.
don't know, I didn't plan on getting into that necessarily, but it was
Right.
just sort of the way that it worked out. And they're a lot of fun to work on, but they're very tiring.
Mm-hmm. Long days, long days.
Very long days. Yeah.
I would say 75% of the shows that I grew up watching were from based in Canada because Noggin, which is discontinued slash kind of not discontinued anymore, it was a Nickelodeon network, and they would
Right.
show Miss Spider, Sunny Patch and Friends, and
That's
Max and
right.
Ruby and Franklin and all that stuff. And I would always sit and wait for the end credits, and I would see all these production companies that were in Canada. And I was like, wow, this is crazy how other countries are involved with all these shows that end up getting sent over to the US for the preschool demographic to watch.
I actually worked at the building the company. So I don't know now sort of who owns what because it always changes hands and
Mhm.
in networks and whatnot. But years ago, I actually worked at what's called Chorus Entertainment, which I think is now owned by a bigger company called Global. But it's a big, beautiful building downtown. It's right on the water. And in that building is where they actually did all of the animation for those shows that you're mentioning. So
Oh,
I didn't work in that department, but
okay.
I'd walk through the building and I'd see like cutouts of Franklin and I'd see cutouts of Max and Ruby. And my kids loved those shows as well, like loved them and still probably talk about them when they're teenagers now. So
Mhm.
yeah, they made an impact. But yeah, that's where it was happening, which was kind of cool.
Wow, that's crazy.
It's
I have always wanted to do a studio walkthrough and walk around and see, the animators talk about their process, what it was like to work on the show and do the coloring and all the drawing, if it was all hand drawn, style of animation and stuff like that.
pretty fun. I've never really been up close and personal in an animation studio, but even when I went to New York for the very first time years ago, I went to the NBC studio tour. And I've worked in television my whole life. So not that I didn't think I'd be impressed. I knew I'd be impressed, but I didn't think that it would be, as big for me as, say for someone who had never been. And I got to tell you, it's impressive. It's just
Mm-hmm.
so there's a richness in the walls, the people that have passed through there, the shows that have been made, standing, up in the balcony, the bleachers of where they shoot Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And I did the typical thing that everyone does. I was like, oh, it looks so much bigger on TV, which I know that I work in TV. But
Mm-hmm.
even standing there, I was like, oh, it does look a lot bigger on TV. It's quite
Yeah.
small when you get into the
Wow.
space. Yeah, exactly. So there's something so special about that. And I just recently worked with somebody on an animation, a very small animation project. I did the writing and then obviously somebody else did the drawing. But even, his process working with him online, I obviously wasn't with him, but I would see his storyboards and I would see the characters come to life. And there's something really special about that. And it takes
Hmm.
so long. It takes so long.
Yeah, just moving two fingers takes
That's right.
two 24 hours just to do. Just that quick
That's
little
right.
2 seconds.
Yeah,
Have you ever been able to keep anything from any of the shows you've worked on? Maybe a little plaque or some type of artifact from the project that you've worked on?
that's a fun question. I do find things. I sometimes forget that I have taken things. And I definitely have, like, I worked on a show which was for Cosmo TV, Cosmo Television, just like the magazine. And I have a vase actually over on my TV stand right now that I took from the set because it's really pretty. But things like I worked on a late night talk show, Canada's kind of only late night talk show, actually. It's not on anymore. We couldn't compete with the US talk shows really, but
Hmm.
we were on for 6 years, which is pretty impressive
Right.
in the grand scheme of things. And it was a really, really fun job. I talk about this all the time. It was one of my favorite jobs I've ever done. I booked all the bands for the show, so it was just a really cool experience. But before I started booking the bands, I was the production coordinator. And so I was almost, at Christmas time and at the end of the year, I was the party planner as well. It just kind of falls into the coordinator's lap. And so I would always do gifts for our favorite guests or gifts for the managers and the agents that would help us get guests on the show.
Hmm.
So I have almost, I think every year I've got something from that. So one year it was a mug, and then one year, it was, what else did we get? We got some pretty fun stuff. So I do have those kinds of things all throughout the house.
Hmm.
I didn't generally ever, swipe or steal anything from a
Right.
set, but it'd be kind of cool to do that actually. Oh, and at the end of the year, Big Brother, because they always change the house over for the next season, they'll do a big sell off. So actually, my microwave is from Big Brother.
Okay. Wow. Just walking around and say, they see that microwave right there? I got that from Big Brother.
I don't even really think about it, and it's nice that you asked actually, because once you have it, you sort of forget. But yeah, that was
Oh.
in the house on
Hmm.
maybe season 3 or season 4, I think. So yeah, I heat my food up in the same microwave that they did on the show.
Hmm. What jobs in the production aspect have had the best catering or food present, for the lunch break or the dinner break where you walked in and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is next level food that is here.
I mean, there's a bit of a running joke, I think, in Canadian productions that we don't have quite as good as catering as you guys do in the States. I think you guys are next level. But my friend moved to Los Angeles years ago, and he would send me pictures of the craft table, and there was an espresso machine, and there was almond milk, and there was, all the things that
Wow.
it was next level for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But when I first started working on the late night talk show, it was my second job in TV, and I couldn't believe that we were being fed every day. Like, it blew
Mm-hmm.
my mind. I really, I don't think I knew that about TV at that time. So for me, yes, after 5 years, the same caterer got a little bit, I wouldn't want to say boring, but it got a little tricky,
Mm-hmm.
and she had trouble, I'm sure, coming up with new things. I never complained because I was so thrilled to be
Right.
fed every single day. I was very pleased. So those meals probably stand out as the most memorable for me. We were shoved into a little teeny tiny kitchen, and we sort of had to line up down the hallway, and then we would all take our turn.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that the best food probably actually happened on Big Brother. They had a pretty nice catering spread, but it was a lot of people to feed, upwards of 150 people on that crew.
Wow.
So it was a bigger machine probably on
Mm-hmm.
that one. So they had a lot more options, but I just was always happy to be given food.
Right.
So, I was always going to be fine and always find something that I could eat for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is awesome. I haven't worked on any sets yet where there's been a big old table with, lasagna and
Yeah,
hamburgers and French fries and all that stuff. It's usually just been the crew gets together, we go to McDonald's or a
right.
pizza place, and that's our dinner for the night or for lunch.
Well, you definitely eat a lot of pizza when you're out shooting. Like I
Mm-hmm.
spent a lot of, a lot of my career being in the field, as they say. And so yeah, when you're on the fly, it's hard to think about. So it's pizza and sandwiches a lot when you're
Yeah.
out. So, when you're in the studio and you're getting this full meal, it's like, oh, it's high, it's next level.
Mm-hmm.
I do write in my job a lot, and
Okay.
it was never I've never been billed, let's say, as a writer, not until probably just a couple of years ago. But I find that with every television job, especially when you're producing, there is a lot of writing. It didn't really occur to me probably until the last couple of years where I thought, God, I've really been writing also my whole career. And writing for me was always the echelon. I mean, aside from doing my own podcast, but I remember I was working, we have our Canadian music awards shows called the Junos. You might have heard of
Mm-hmm.
it. It's just like the Grammys, but for Canadians. And I do work on that. And I've done little segments for them for years and years. And it was just a couple of years ago that the executive producer said to me, we were on a call, and she said, Hey, would you like to write the intro for Sarah McLachlan? And I was like, yeah, I'd like to write the intro for Sarah
Yes.
McLachlan. Yes, please, and thank you. So now I've done that a few more times. Pretty special when you see a celebrity, or not even a celebrity, just someone, saying your words and putting it in their own way. And
Mm-hmm.
there's something really, really special about that. So yeah, that was the first time that had happened, when I was already on the job. And then they said, Hey, do you want to give this a shot? I'm not a big script writer necessarily.
Okay.
I did write scripts in one of my jobs with my co-producer, and I like it very much, but am more of a first person storyteller type of writer.
Right.
So to be able to, do an intro, let's say, to a band, or do an intro to something for someone, that felt really natural to me, because I could just kind of put myself in her headspace. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's really special. Writing is one of my favorite things.
Yeah. When it comes to screenplays, it requires a lot of thought and where's the character going throughout this story? We gotta have interesting beats throughout this
Yeah, and it
story,
can
and it's
kind of
gonna
get
keep the
lost a bit.
audience going all the way
That's
to the
right.
end.
Yeah, and keep them interested. Exactly. So sometimes I have a tendency, I might veer off a little bit. So, and if it's my own story, I don't do that because I know the story. So,
Hmm.
yeah, a really good script is something very special. People that can do that, oh man, it's a cool skill.
Oh yeah. Do you get ideas usually right away, or do you have to have a certain environment that you go to have these ideas come to you?
A few years ago, probably over five now, I started writing for a blog called Find Your Pleasure. And it's run by a woman who is on television here. She's a morning show host. It's kind of like a show like The View. There's five of them.
Okay.
And she started this blog, and she's written a book. She's a lovely, lovely, lovely human. And she was looking for writers to contribute because the blog was starting to grow. And so when she asked me and hired me to be part of this, in the beginning, it was hard. Like I was trying to come up with subjects, and like I said, I really write in the first person, and she was fine with that. But I needed it to work for her blog as well. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to find her thing. It's all about pleasure, all different types of pleasure. So I was trying to really take my stories, and it would take me days sometimes, and I would get frustrated, and I'd go for a walk, and I'd come back, and and now what's so beautiful, it's like anything that you practice and you do over and over again. Now it does not take me that long at all. And I realize you can pretty much make anything into a story. So
Mm-hmm.
it comes with doing it again and again, and getting used to your voice, your writing voice.
Right.
So I don't necessarily have to go to any kind of place, but having it be quiet. One thing I do, this is really weird, but my kids can attest to this. I need a clean house to be able to write.
Okay.
So they're home because online schooling this year, and it's been tricky, and they keep their rooms how they keep their rooms, but I need the place where I'm working to be tidy. And one day they said, why does it, we're just here. Why do you have to do it right? And I said, because I can't have clutter and dirty dishes when I'm
Yeah.
trying to, come up with ideas for writing. So that's the one thing that I need to have. I need to have
Mm.
a clean space.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. Sometimes if the desk has too much stuff, the brain keeps going, oh, there's four papers on the desk.
That's right.
I gotta get it off.
That's
I
right.
gotta write this down though. I got a deadline, and then it's just a back and forth. And finally, I just take it and put it somewhere for you temporary, just so I can get back in that headspace to keep going.
Well, that's you're right. It's distracting. And I don't think I'd ever really thought about it before they had been here and we're all spending so much time in the house. I'm working in the house, they're doing school in the house, we're all here. And I think that that's when it really hit me. I thought, no, I can't concentrate when I know there's a sink full of dishes. It will make me
Hmm.
crazy. So I need to be clear and clean before I start actually
Yeah.
writing.
If only there was a spell where you could, wave your hand in the air
That's
and
right.
everything that
Yes.
goes invisible for a certain time, and then you could just work in that space, and then when
Uh-huh.
you want to return to that, you could just go, and then it just comes back.
Or my kids could just do their dirty dishes. I mean, that's a solution
Oh
too.
yes, that is too. You just get the Infinity Gauntlet and you use one of the mind control stones and just point it at them, and
Right.
then boom, done.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, I see all the post-it notes behind you. Are those affiliated with any of the jobs you've done over the years? Maybe little short diaries or memos or things like that?
Well, we call that our wall of love notes.
Okay.
So it started one day. I wish that I could remember. I'm going to have to try to really think about this because people ask me about it, of course. It started one day with an actual note. I don't know which one it was, but it ended up somebody had written something really sweet and popped it on the wall. This is a wall of mirrors. I do not care for this wall of mirrors. I've never liked it. I've tried to take them down. The wall is kind of damaged underneath, and you have to replace the floorboard and you have to replace the baseboard. And
Hmm.
every time I've thought about doing it, it's just become, it feels overwhelming to me. Like it's not
Hmm.
just a project where you take down mirrors and you paint the wall. So the post it went up and it was up there for a few days. And then the next thing you know, somebody else added one and then someone else added one. So really, what we say is when people come to visit, we ask them to leave a love note. It can be about anything. It doesn't have to be to us. It can be about themselves. It can be a quote that they, inspirational quote. It's really just about receiving and giving goodness.
Hmm.
We put up obviously our own quotes. It's been dry in the last year because of course people haven't been becoming to visit because of the pandemic.
Right.
But I went on my Instagram actually at one point and asked everyone to send me what they would write on a love note, and then we wrote them all out. So there's a section over here that has it's all my handwriting, but it's quotes from other people,
Hmm.
and some of them are really silly and funny and make no sense, and some of them are quite thoughtful. But for the most part, the idea is that it's a wall of love and goodness so that
Hmm.
when we're sitting in here and walking by and it's always a conversation starter. People always want to know
Yeah.
what it is and we're slowly filling it. I'd say it's maybe close to 3/4 of the way full. So
Hmm.
at some point we might start layering over top of them, but we can never have too much love, so I think it's
Yeah.
okay.
I've always wanted to do something with a push pin board where you stick stuff on it and it kind of details a certain history, whether it's career stuff, fun stuff, or some of that nature, and it's kind of either in a straight line or it's one picture here, one note up
Yeah,
here, some down here, and that type of style, or zigzaggy, something like that.
well, you should do it. This can be your inspiration.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down and buy a push pin board and off we go.
Do it and send me a picture.
Okay, what is a store aisle you have the most difficulty going past in the store? Because I find it that I can sometimes go past, the Oreos, sometimes in the store, but sometimes, if I do a double take, it's that double take that gets me, and I see the Oreos and I go, oh man, I shouldn't have done that double take, and then you walk out with three little packages
Mm,
of the Oreos, and they're gone in a week or so.
I do love an Oreo. My vice is ice cream. It always
Okay.
has been. So impossible for me to walk by that aisle. The problem also with my grocery store is now in COVID, the way that they have us moving through the grocery store is, of course, you come in the door, you do all your produce, and you go down your aisles. And the very last aisle is the milk, eggs, cheese, ice cream aisle.
Hmm.
And then they've got you spaced 6 feet apart at the end, but that means you're standing, like you're slowly, you take your steps and you're just walking past the ice cream out. Like it's just,
Yeah.
there's no hope for anybody because you're surrounded by it and you're moving very slowly. So I'll stand there and I think, okay, yeah, okay, I can get a container of that. And then I do 2 steps forward and I'm in the next section. I'm like, oh, well, my kids like drumsticks. So I throw in some drumsticks. So
Hmm.
my freezer is, synonymous with having at least 3 containers of Ben and Jerry's, probably a pack of drumsticks or creamsicles for the girls.
Hmm.
And then, we'll have the odd one flavor. So, like just a regular Breyers vanilla, let's say, just in case we
Yeah.
want to make a milkshake or a sundae or something. It gets serious over here. We're serious about ice cream.
Hmm. I would do this thing where I would have a tiny little cup and I would scoop some ice cream in it and I put some milk and some chocolate syrup, but I wouldn't use a blender. I'd use a spoon and stir it all around that way. That was my DIY milkshake creation,
That's
no blender needed,
delicious.
just quick and fast. Mix it
Yeah,
around, the thickness is created, and boom, done.
I love that. My mom used to, her treat was she loved vanilla ice cream with Captain Crunch cereal and then caramel syrup on top of that. So it was sort of like you got a little bit of a crunch, you got a little bit of creaminess, and then you've got the real sweetness of the caramel on top of it. And that was her favorite.
I have gotten better at not saying you too in situations where it shouldn't be said because I used to have this problem where at the movie theater they say, enjoy your movie, you too. And they're like, oh, dang it. That guy is like, what the heck is he talking about? I'm going to be
Right.
standing here for the next 6 hours. I'm not seeing any movies. And then I was like, oh, dang it. Why did I say that? I just thought he was going to say something else that would correlate to me saying you too, but at the last second, it was something else. And my brain was like, oh, we'll just get this out and just keep walking. And then,
It's that awkward thing. But then you know what? I would take that if I was that person. I would take that as, you're just trying to return a nicety and you ended up saying that instead. I was like, okay,
yeah.
well, I'll enjoy the next movie that I watch
Hmm.
then because you told me to.
Oh yeah, I would just have to go back and say, hey, here's $20. Where do you get off work? The Door of the Dark World is playing. You could see that
Right.
if you want. That way you are reciprocating that, and it's not just being hit by a wall that you too, it's
Right.
actually being delivered properly. Is there an area of film that you'd like to dabble in more?
So it's the one sort of area that I've actually not worked in. I've worked in almost every genre of television. I've done docuseries, I've done reality, I've done awards shows and late night talk show, but film is the one thing that I haven't worked in. And it's funny, I think in the beginning of my career, it feels like the echelon, like they feel like they're making the real important stuff. To me, I thought that it would be so cool to work like on a film set. But as I got more and more into my career and as I get older, of course, again, those long days, taking 3, 4, 5 days to shoot one scene, I can't. To be honest, like I just want to get it done, and it's not that I need to race through it completely. I
Yeah,
just cannot imagine the patience and the perseverance that you have to try and get through those days when you're just shooting the same thing, right? There's
yeah,
very special. It's a special medium. And I've always thought, gosh, I'd love to just see it. I don't know if I want to work in it. I have friends that work in it, they love it. But yeah, it's tedious to me. It feels That's what it feels like.
hmm yeah. Some days you film a scene and then they go in the edit, like, oh. we gotta reshoot this. There
Oh
was a
man,
Starbucks cup in the back, and we can't have
that's
that in the
right.
shot. Copyright, and like, oh, whoops, who left the cup there, and then you reshoot the scene, and everyone's, no Starbucks cups, no McDonald's cup, no nothing. We can't,
Right.
we don't have the license for it, guys. We gotta be prepared.
Well, even continuity, that is a job I always thought that I would
Oh,
love to do.
yeah.
And because I can do it just beautifully from my couch, I can, criticize everything. Oh, her hair was tucked behind her ear, but now it's not tucked behind her ear. Easy to do from the comfort of my own living room, of course. But to me, just those kinds of things that you have to be on top of, it's just, wow, it's so crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I've been on projects where it isn't until the edit that I see them. I'm like, oh, how did I not notice? Oh my goodness.
That's right.
Everyone's shooting and filming, and I was on set, and, looking around, making sure everything's good, except for this side of the frame where continuity error was. I, for some reason, did not catch that while I was on set.
Right. Yeah, I know. And it's crazy because you think you've looked it over, you've seen it all. How did you miss it? But until it's in that little square sometimes and you're really looking at it in front of yourself, you don't necessarily notice it.
Hmm. What do you think is the most handy type of equipment that you've used? A desktop or a laptop?
Well, laptop has changed the game, hasn't it? I think back to like, when I first started out in TV and we had these gigantic, I found pictures of these gigantic computers that were sitting on our desk and you'd have to like move your desk stuff had to basically live around this thing because it took up all the space. So you'd have a little space to write, or your phone was over here. The desks used to be packed with stuff. Now that I can pick this laptop up and I can move to my kitchen or I can go sit outside, like what a I sound ancient by saying this, but like it's quite incredible to
Yeah.
think that. I remember I used to take my monitor and I'd pile it up on phone books because I needed it to be higher instead of looking down all the time. So, to be able to like move this around is pretty special. I love my laptop. I've had it this one for a really long time, knock on wood. It keeps going for a little while longer. I love
Hmm.
it. It's perfect for me. It's got a lot of stuff on it. I worry about that sometimes,
Yeah.
moving everything over if I ever got a new one. But I'm pretty particular. I don't love change too much. So, even though the keyboards, some of them are starting to fade, the S has lost its luster,
Hmm.
but I love it. You just get attached to the things that become yours and
Yeah.
you're so used to the way they feel and the way that they work. So yeah, I'm a laptop girl. I love it.
I would go to the library way back in the day in elementary school where it had the heavy glass attached to it, and I would put my arm up to it, and there was this magnetic pulse where my hairs would stick out to it, and you can kind of feel like a electric touch from the glass, and
Right.
I was like,
Yeah.
"Whoa, this power is! I am a Jedi now. I can, use the electricity or something." And it was
Yeah.
always,
It's pretty
it would
cool.
keep my attention for minutes and hours if I had been in the library for a long time. But I would just sit there, and if I was done with my stuff for library class, I would just do that for
That's
the
so
time being
funny.
until it was time to go back to class.
Well, now kids have fidget toys. That's the new version of fidget
Hmm.
where they click all the things. And my kid has about 20 of them right now, and I can hear her sometimes just clicking away. So that's the new version of putting your arm up to the to the screen, I think.
Man, I still have my elementary school agenda book. That is one of the
Mhm.
things I'm proud that I still have with me because there's one thing I've always said on the show before is cafeteria menus. I threw them all away, and sometimes I have days where I wonder, what did Michael have November 10th,
Right.
2008 in the cafeteria? But since I don't have the menu, I can't
You
remember,
don't
was it
know.
something from home that I got, or was it something from the cafeteria? So it's just now up in the air because those
Right.
menus from the school they're long gone.
Well, there is something really special about keeping. I have quite a bit of stuff. I've got a bin downstairs of old stuff, and I my mom passed away a few years ago. And so we cleaned out her house. And it was when you're cleaning out your parents' house after they've died, you're so overwhelming because you don't know what to keep and you don't know what to take. So I just sort of grabbed some stuff. Like I just was like, I threw it all. So over the last few years, I slowly will like open a pile or open an envelope of whatever. And I found all my old report cards that was in a pile. So that was kind of cool because I could see, what my teachers said about me. And I found some old pictures from school. And Facebook is so beautiful for the reason I stay on Facebook because I don't really love it. But what I do love about it is I stay in touch with people that I went to school with, which is a very long time ago now. And so having those memories, somebody reminded me about the fries and gravy. And I didn't pay for lunch very often because my mom wouldn't let me do that. But every Friday or every other Friday, probably, I was allowed to get fries and gravy, and they were so good. And so, to be reminded of that is kind of special. It's so hard. What do you keep? What do you not keep? But having
Hmm.
your agenda is cool. I guess it's kind of like a diary, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it would have Monday through Friday, and it would have math, science, history, social studies, and you would have to write the assignment that was due the following week
Yeah.
in that little box. So I can look back and, oh, how many of these weeks did I procrastinate? Let's see here. And I'm flipping through. Oh, yep, I remember I procrastinated this week as well. Oh, there's a smiley face on this day. I wonder what happened that day. Then I have
Right.
to think of that. Oh, I remember someone gave me their little ice cream on Thanksgiving dinner at the cafeteria. So that's why there's a smiley face there. It's because I had two ice creams instead of the tiny little one ice cream.
Right. My oldest daughter has kept most of her agendas. And I keep saying to her, like, why aren't we throwing this out? And I think it's the same thing as what you're saying. Friends have written notes in there. She's written assignments in there. Teachers have commented. There's been, because you'd hand your agenda in to the teacher and then they would make sure that you were checking it off. And
Hmm.
so I think that there's a bit of a nostalgia there. And maybe it's a good thing to keep it, I guess.
Did you ever have fun Fridays at your elementary school? There were events where you had good grades. One building would have maybe board games, another building would have maybe more board games, and then the PE department would do outside activities for those who wanted to be active, maybe freeze tag or treasure hunt or something like that. And another building would do this thing, and then another hallway would do this thing.
It sounds super familiar to me. And I'm trying to think of what the name, I know there was a name for it, and it would be, yeah, we would just be able to, yeah, they set up games because it wasn't a track and field day. It was different than that. They'd set up games all around outside. I can totally see that. I can see kids that would have stayed inside and done classroom activities, but I feel like there was, oh, it's going to come to me, I'm sure, after we stop talking, but I'm sure that there was a name
Hmm.
for it actually. But yeah, that's funny. I hadn't really thought about that in a long time, but we for sure did that. Yeah, those
Okay.
were fun days.
Oh yes. I would always do Dance Dance Revolution, and they would have the two real uh step machine thingies, and then for the other students, they would have a more flimsy padding for you to do the movement, and they didn't work, but there was something about it being placed down where you felt I'm actually hitting the left arrow and hitting the top arrow, even though I'm not. It's just I
Right.
feel that I am in control of the dancing here and I'm getting all the points, and it would be tons and tons of students all spaced out in the gymnasium. We would just be playing along to the songs, moving our feet to all the arrows up and down and left and right, and it was a blast.
That's pretty fun. Yeah, that's super fun.
If there is a time period that you could revisit, what time period would that be?
I just was talking to someone about this the other day. I loved my 20s. My 20s were really fun. My daughter even says to me, I can't wait. They're teenagers, but she's like, well, I have a tween and a teen, but she says, I can't wait to get in my 20s. You made them sound so great. And I was like, oh boy, does that mean all the best years are behind me? I guess. I don't know. But I really enjoyed that time. So if I was going to relive like a decade of my life. And I would definitely do things differently, some, but not all, because
Hmm.
you can't, if you do things differently, then you don't end up where you are necessarily. So you got to be careful what you wish for, I would say. But I had a really fun time. I backpacked through Europe a few times. I had a really fun job. I was working at a restaurant. It was before I got into television, actually. But I just had a really good time and I met a lot of really fun people.
Hmm.
If I had to visit a time period that I didn't know or that I hadn't been a part of, it would have been cool to see the 60s and maybe 70s. Like I was born in the 70s, but
Hmm.
I didn't really, I didn't live necessarily. Like I'd be cool to be a teenager or an adult in the 70s, just because I feel like things were really changing then and the music was kind of cool and people were a little bit becoming a little more free, I think. So I
Hmm.
think the 70s would be cool to be a part of again.
Okay. Um, when it came to film jobs in the early stages, I know things have changed as of recent, but would you always go in, even if it was just to shake somebody's hand and be like, "Hey, here's my resume"? Because I know some studios allow you to walk on the location to talk to someone, but back then I'm not sure if it was like, "Hey, it's private property," which means no entry. You got to know the person who also knows that person who also knows that person to get your foot in the door.
I've been so lucky in my career. I took my first job in television was a driving job, and I had got it through a friend, and it was a 6 week summer driving gig. I had just moved to Toronto. I didn't know how to get around Toronto, but I had my big map book and I'd looked at the route the night before. I had to pick somebody up, and it was just a blast. I had so much fun. But honestly, from there, I've been so lucky. From that job, I got the late night talk show job. I was on that for 5 years. And then from that job, I got the Canadian Idol job. So I really, you know, and I say this with much gratitude, I haven't
Mhm.
had to chase too much. I've sort of been, been called, or when you're on a production, a lot of times, either that particular production company is moving on to their next thing and they bring everyone with them, or somebody in your, gang would say, yeah, I'm going on to blah, blah, blah. I think they're looking for so and so. So it's been a very natural flow throughout my career that I've
Mhm.
just been able to sort of move. And there's been lots of periods without work. Don't get me wrong, that does happen. And you have to reach out to people. But for the most part, I've sort of just gone from show to show, which has been pretty great and pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
I know. It's lucky.
I can't imagine having to look at a map and figure out
Oh,
my
that.
routes.
Yeah.
My mom and dad had to do that for a good while before, Google Maps became a thing and you could
Uh-huh.
just tap it in and just out for yo.
That was the bigger part that was the biggest part of my job really at that time, because I had to pick up different people, like the actors that were on the show, and then sometimes I would have to get the producer or whatever. And so somebody who's just moved here, I didn't know where I was going. And so I'd open up. I had the map book, and I would open up and I would find my route and see who was next in that took up a great amount of time to try to
Mhm.
figure out where to be. And you didn't want to be flipping through the book. So you almost had to like memorize the route, because when
Yeah.
I arrived at the first person's house, I wanted to be all like, okay, we're just heading to the next
Hmm.
person's and I know exactly where I'm going. So I sort of had to fake it until I made it. And then you get really close with the people, obviously, and
Yeah.
and then it's fine and nobody's judging you. And if you said, "Oh, I don't know where I'm going," they would be cool with it. But yeah, in the beginning for sure, I had to really map it out. I laugh about that now, even with my children when we're out driving. Like back in the day, I had to know the city. I mean, I
Hmm.
know the city very well, but you really had to know where you were going because there was no Siri to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. What a, that must have been interesting. You have a lantern that you're holding, it's nighttime and you're just going over everything again. Okay, to the left here and then
Yep.
and all right. Hopefully
When I grew up in
all
a
goes
small
well.
town and you didn't really know street names, I still don't know the street names of my small town because it was turn right at the church and turn left at the school and turn right at, so and so's house. Like you didn't really talk in terms of street names. You
Hmm.
talked in terms of, buildings or landmarks, let's say.
I am more of a landmark person than a street person. Once I get the landmarks down, I know where I'm going. And whenever people go, "How do you get there? What routes do you take?" I'm always trying to learn shortcuts. I go, "Oh, there's a big tree by this oil shop. You just turn there. Like, what street is that? Oh, mm, well, backtrack. If you go down, there's this little field
Yeah,
with corn. That's close, and then they don't know
right.
what's going on. I'm like,
You'd be good on Amazing Race because I think having landmarks and knowing like your space is a really good quality for that show.
oh, okay,
So you should apply for Amazing
okay,
Race.
Amazing Race.
Yeah. Just write it down. You got to
Yeah,
do your pin board and then you got to apply for Amazing Race. Those are the
okay,
assignments I've given you today.
Amazing Race. That sounds very familiar.
Oh, do you
Um,
not know the show?
um, was it on Discovery by
You're so
chance?
young. You're so
Discovery?
young. It's been on
Oh,
for a really long time. I'm going to say
okay.
it's been on for 20 years, if I think. I don't know what station it's on. It's on a main network. It's with Jeff Probst. He's the host. And no, he's is Jeff Probst. No, he's Survivor. Wait, which one is Survivor?
Um,
I can't remember who hosts Amazing Race now.
okay.
Anyway, yeah, and they and couples, people, duos run around the world trying to find markers until they come in at the end and win $1 million or something.
Wow.
Yeah, get on it. You got to get on the show.
Okay. Have you ever been in the room with any big actors and actresses where you're just sitting in a corner and they kind of walk on set and you're like, whoa, is that who I think it is type thing? Where like, oh my goodness, what are they doing here?
I mean, I think I've always known who was going to be there. I think the coolest thing about working on the late night talk show is that every night there was two guests plus a musical guest. So, 5 days a week for the course of a season, you were seeing and meeting and hanging out with celebrities every single night. And some of them were a little lesser known, let's say, and some of them were more A-list, but just to be able to like hang around in the green room with these people, and they're just really normal people, most of them. Some of them come with some interesting quirks and personality traits, but it was a real joy of that job to be able to just, I don't know, chill in the green room with Pink or Lionel Richie or, yeah, like I met a lot of amazing
Wow,
people on that job. Yeah,
that
pretty
is
fun.
crazy.
It was crazy. It was crazy. And I talk about it so much, and my kids hear me talk about it, and I've talked about it on my podcast, and I've talked about it on Instagram. And I think people are probably going to get so sick. Like, get in the present day, lady. Stop living in the past. But how can I? It was the
Yeah.
best job ever.
Wow. The biggest person I've met in person was Olin Rogers. He is a content creator on YouTube and he's done story times, but most recently he got into TV and is doing Final Space on TBS. And it was a live show and he just so happened to be stopping by in Arizona. And I said, I have gotta go. This is a rarity for an individual to stop in Arizona to do
Sure.
anything. They're
Yeah.
usually hitting California, New York, Las Vegas. This is a win-win scenario. And um, once the meet and greet initiated, I was trying to calculate, okay, people behind me, I don't want to take up too much time. I gotta get out how much of an inspiration he's been to me, but at the same time, keep it short because there's people behind me. So
Right.
as I'm walking up, this is all going in my head, and finally, I come up to him And my brain kind of went, I'm just gonna shut down just for a little bit, but you'll be okay, right? And then it disappeared. I was like, oh, and then we talked, we shook hands, took a photo, and then I did my best to, deliver, hey, I've watched your stuff for a while. You've been big inspiration to me, and really appreciate, your content and stuff. And he was very appreciative of it. And as I walked away, he said, persistency, that's very important in this field is
Mm.
persistency. And I walked away saying, wow, I really appreciate that. And then I walked away, and then my brain was like, okay, what did I miss? What happened back there? I know I shut down on you a while ago, but I'm back now. And I was like,
Oh,
well,
that's very
I'm
funny.
glad you're back, but I, I, it was a little, I got a little sweaty when the brain went off.
Well, it tends to happen. We think that we're going to have it figured out, and you're right. You want to make sure that you say something kind of important or meaningful or impactful for yourself. You want to have a takeaway, but then you only have a certain amount of time to do it. So we sort of, go into panic mode. But it's really cool that he left you with a thought like that, like I think
Mhm,
that's neat because you were able to walk away and sort of take something from a short little meeting, but it would make that even more meaningful for you. So that's really cool. I wonder if he does
mhm.
that with everybody or he just was motivated in that moment, but that's a pretty neat thing.